Hello, everyone. Today, I'd just like to go over some of my recent gaming acquisitions, both new and old games, and also some merchandise associated with games. I figured I'd do one of these videos in lieu of a blog post, mostly just because I think that this would be a bit quicker than having to write a paragraph about all the stuff that I've acquired recently. Let's just say that this covers from the beginning of January until now. So let's say from January to August, these are my gaming related pickups. That being said, I'll be doing this all in one cut, so I apologize if I get anything wrong or if there are any mistakes along the way. But let's start with going from new to old as far as console generation. So the first game that I picked up was Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Um, Still sealed in plastic wrap because I haven't got the chance to play it quite yet. Working on some other things that I'll talk about today. But I'm a pretty big fan of Xenoblade 2, despite its a lot of flaws. Because I like the game so much, I think it's okay for me to speak to some of those flaws, including the gacha blade system, some of the skill checks, etc. But overall, it was still a very well put together game, and so I think that Xenoblade 3 it seems like it's not going to disappoint either. And so, yeah, once I get done with all the other things on my plate, I'm eager to give this a shot. I have actively avoided any sort of engagement with trailers or spoilers or anything of the like, so it'll be a completely fresh experience for me, and I hope I'll like it as much as the second game. Okay, here's something that I picked up next. This is Mario Party Superstars. You can see that this one is opened. It has some really nice inside cover art to this one, and you can see the game is missing because I currently have it in my Switch. Um, I'm a really big fan of the N64 Mario parties. I grew up with those titles. They're some of my most fondest childhood memories is playing Mario Parties 1 through 3 with my friends and my neighbors back in middle school. And so, I was really eager to pick this one up. Now, I think it's a little bit incomplete right now because they haven't really announced any sort of DLC or anything related to this game yet, and I would really like more boards. However, I think it's a pretty nice game as it is right now, and I got to relive some of those old memories with some close friends by playing some of the retro-inspired mini games that are included in this one. So, big fan of Mario Party Superstars. Still play that pretty regularly at parties and the like. So here's another Switch game. This is Record of Lodoss War, a Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth. So this game, I apologize for my lighting, a little bit more clear. This game is actually taken from, or I should say, developed by Team Ladybug, which, if you might be familiar, they are the indie dev studio who is also behind Toho Luna Nights, and also now recently has released a game called Drainus, which is a horizontal shooter for Steam, and it's coming to consoles later. But Record of Lodoss War is actually, you know, an IP from, some old anime from way back when that I never had the chance to watch myself, but have heard good things about. I believe it's some sort of space opera. I could be wrong. But this game is a Metroidvania, very much like Toho Luna Nights. Heard great things about the game, and if it's one thing Team Ladybug is known for, it's their art style. And it's really iconic, and it's a really great, a really great take on pixel art. So I'm really eager to break open the seal here and start playing it after I get through some of the other things. But it's nice that this game got a physical release. I was not expecting that. And actually, if you can see on the top there, I have this misprint variant that seems to have come out from Best Buy, where you have this blue slash over one of the characters' faces, which I thought was kind of cool. I mean, it doesn't. I don't really care too much that exists, or I'm not really looking to get that replaced or anything. But nevertheless, it's a cool title. Happy to have picked that up and look forward to playing it. All right, collecting more shrink wrap here. Got a huge backlog, as you might imagine. This is Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, one of the legendary arcade series by Taito, which Also was released on home console in various versions, known in Japan as Kiki Kai Kai. This was published by Natsume, which is kind of nice because they had also published some of the Super Nintendo and Super Famicom games when it came to console. I believe this is kind of a remake of the first game, but it has a lot of I would say it has a lot of restructured, gameplay and levels. So I wouldn't exactly say this is like a one-to-one or anything with those previous games. I'm a really big fan of the arcade video game genre. And you might have known this from just watching some of my other videos on shmups and video or in fighting games and the such. And so I really jumped at the chance to try out a series that I had, not really had the opportunity to give a fair shot to until now. And it's kind of a blast from the past as well, because how often do you see a game with both Taito and Natsume on the cover, something modern at least these days, if it's not an arcade compilation, a re-release of the same games. So yeah, this was a really interesting game that got released, and of course I had to buy it. So looking forward to playing that. Here's a game that I actually completed and opened all the way through. This is the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. This was a translation or a localization of the two 3DS Great Ace Attorney games that never made it here initially. I believe it was some 5 or so years ago that these games came out in Japan. And I believe one of the reasons why this was not initially localized was just because of the setting. It's very influenced by historical themes of, Japan and Great Britain during a certain time period, which I won't embarrass myself by trying to guess. But it kind of becomes a bit more apparent when you play these games because there's a lot of Old English or localizations where they try to keep it very, periodic to the time period. And so overall, I said that I did beat this game, both entries that are included on this Switch cartridge. I could say that I really enjoyed it. Although one kind of unfortunate fact about this game is that it was released as 2 games initially in Japan. But was conceived, at least if my sources are correct, it was conceived as a single game that was then split into 2 due to logistical reasons. And so because of that, it really does feel just like one game. And how that impacted this series, and specifically this spin-off series, is that when the first game came out, it really didn't feel complete. It felt like it opened a bunch of threads and a bunch of stories that didn't get resolved. There's a very, very particular, very obvious, something that's apparent from the cover, plot hole that is not cleared up in the first game that is then re-explored in the second game. And so, I heard that it wasn't exactly appreciated that they did it that way. And so the second game sold, worse than the first. And this is expected because it's a sequel, but also because of those mishaps. And because of that, we haven't really seen a new installment in the Ace Attorney series since the second game in this sub-series came out. So, the fact that they re-released the original trilogy and now gave this game a shot, and I believe it sold well, means that hopefully we'll be seeing more Ace Attorney soon. But yeah, it's just a fun fact about this game series. And I've played through all of the 6 mainline games plus these now, so I would say that I'm a pretty big fan of the Ace Attorney series. So yeah, that's it for that one. Here is another one. I should have included all of my Switch sealed games at the very beginning because I won't have a lot to say about them yet. But this is Live Alive, Live Alive, Live Alive. A recently released game by Square Enix, which is a remake in the, I guess, HD 2D style of the original Super Famicom game. And if you weren't aware, this is actually one of the more famous examples of a good Japanese RPG on the Super Famicom that never got a English localization. If you ask people, hey, what are some imports on the Super Famicom that I need to get? It's usually this one, Bahamut Lagoon, Front Mission, Gun Hazard, these sorts of things. But this is always at the top of every list. And so it was always on my radar, and there is a fan translation that exists for the original version. But, when they announced that they were remaking it, I had to say, well, glad I didn't play through it before, because now I can experience an enhanced version. And so, yep, the seal's still there. I'm going to break it soon. I believe I'm going to be visiting this guy next after the current game that I'm playing. So, really excited to give this a try finally. It seems very unique. One kind of funny thing that didn't occur to me, but came up when I was talking to my partner about it, is that there are no women on this cover. At least I believe. Let me take a closer look. I don't think so. At least it doesn't seem that way. So, kind of interesting. Well, you can live a bunch of lives, but not if you're female, I suppose. But, it is what it is. Different time, perhaps. Okay, so that's all my Switch-related stuff for the past 8 or so months. Really happy to have gotten some of these guys, and it's going to keep me busy for quite a while. And now we'll get to some of the more retro stuff. So going back in time. And a lot of this is stuff I've already played, so don't have that issue with the backlog. It's more for nostalgia's sake. So this is, my first entry for the PSP. This is Final Fantasy Tactics, The War of Lions, the initial remake/remaster of Final Fantasy Tactics, which I believe originally came out on the PlayStation 1. This is an enhanced version, which, I think helps to add some quality of life features, etc. This game, it was during a period where the PSP was receiving a ton of remasters and remakes. And so this is just one of the ones that came out. I believe, actually, that there is an issue with this game where the spell animations take a really long time or lag really badly. And so actually, I think that there is a patch for this game that removes that, taking some of the inspiration of the cell phone ports. So without that patch, I think actually the cell phone port of this game is actually superior. But regardless, this is a game that... oh, interesting. We have a little postage card here and an insert. This is a game that I played. I don't quite like it as much as Tactics Ogre. But it's famous. It really needs no introduction. You can see the very characteristic art style here with Ramza and Delita on the cover. So yeah, very cool. I'm glad to be owning this on the PSP. I didn't have it before, and it was actually really cheap. So I'm surprised given the state of retro gaming today and the prices of things. But you'll see that a running theme with a lot of these retro things is that it's cheap, because I'm priced out of most of the other expensive consoles and also other games that are really sought after by collectors these days. But that's okay. That gives us an opportunity to look at some of the more obscure or maybe the cheaper things in a given library. For example, this is Innocent Life, a futuristic Harvest Moon for the PlayStation Portable. Also a Natsume published game. This is kind of like it's exactly what the title says. It's Harvest Moon with a futuristic setting. I believe you play as an android, which is kind of funny. And I haven't given this game a shot yet, but it looked really interesting, and it was really cheap. Actually, I should say that I got these PSP games, and one more that'll be coming up soon. Excuse me for touching the camera. At a local collectors and video game trading event at the Frankensons, which is near my town. If you don't know what Frankensons is, it's just like a collectibles trade show that happens 3 times a week in this giant warehouse. It's a very privileged thing to have a place like that nearby, because it's like a convention 3 times a week. But they had a specific video game related event, and we had a lot of vendors come out and sell a bunch of cheap PSP games, these being 2 of them, right? So I saw this at someone's booth. Actually, I saw 2 copies, and it was going for next to nothing. So I thought, well, I like farming sims. I'm partial to the Rune Factory series, but I wanted to give this a shot. And it just seems really cool. It's definitely a product of its time. Harvest Moon is very much one of the classic farming sims of retro gaming today. So I didn't know that they would have both a fantasy spin-off in the Rune Factory series and also this guy. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. Um, Not much content when I was trying to do research to decide whether or not to buy it online or on YouTube. So maybe, there's some content there if anyone wants to give that a shot. I don't think I'm up to it, but, you know, looking into games like that, there's a market for it. I would watch that video. Here is Dynasty Warriors for the PSP. I actually know nothing about this game besides the fact that I owned it at some point in the past. I don't know what happened to it. And it was my first Dynasty Warriors game. I had never played this on a previous console before, or in this case, a handheld. And so I got this as a gift from like a family member at some point. And I remember, you got to play the campaign mode. You would choose a character and just do classic Muso things. And a funny story is that I lent it to my friend. And one day he was playing it, and I was just chilling at his house, and he was like, "Jason, you are this character." And I'm like, "Okay, who could this be? Like, this guy's trolling me." And he picks, I don't know what this guy's name is. I completely forgot everything besides the fact that it was just some buff ass bald dude with just one axe. It's like a one-handed axe, and he was just like, he's just playing Dynasty Warriors with this dude. I'm like, man, that looks nothing like me. But yeah, that story has always stuck with me whenever I think about this game. I just thought it was so hilarious. But it's a Dynasty Warriors game. Nothing too special, but what's special is the memories that came with it. So this is like less than $10. So I just thought, okay, well, I don't know what happened to my copy, so might as well recall some memories, give it a spin, just to recall some of that nostalgia. Okay, so that's all the PSP stuff. Did pick up several more things from that trade event at Frankenstein's, so I'll show that here. This is R Racing Revolution, or R Racing Evolution, excuse me, published by Namco for the PlayStation 2. Now this is a spin-off game in the Ridge Racer franchise, which happens to be one of my favorite racing games of all time, or racing series. This is kind of interesting because this was, if I'm correct, Ridge Racer's attempt to go more realistic, so more racing sim as opposed to the more arcadey stuff that they're known for. And I can kind of see that that's the case here because we have some brand deals. We have Honda and Acura, which I assume are some sponsorships, amongst others, General Motors, that they had for this game. We have, of course, the lovely Reiko Nagase on the front, which is Ridge Racer's poster girl. And yeah, this game was incredibly cheap, and I'm a huge sucker for Ridge Racer and all of its history. They've got a lot of different games, a lot of really cool sub games, this being one of them. We have Rage Racer as well on the PlayStation 1, and it's just really cool piece of history. And I really love this series of Namco developed driving games. So yeah, when I saw this, and this is a common theme, this is less than $10, right? So yeah, being the fan that I am, I just had to give it a shot. So I have a hacked PS2. I don't need to pop in the disc because I don't want to wear my PS2 laser. Those things are notorious for going out. I've already had to replace it multiple times. So I have the hard drive mod, so I'll just be playing that off of a hard drive. But it's nice to have this on the shelf as well, and feel it in my hands. It's just awesome. What else can I say? Okay, so here's another cool one, and something that's a little bit more obscure. This is Castle Shikigami 2, excuse me, for the PlayStation 2, otherwise known as the Shikigami no Shiro series of vertical shmups developed by Alpha System. If you're not familiar, these are classic vertical shmups that have the unique mechanic that each of the characters have very distinct Shikigami spells, or it's called different things in different games. But the reason why I'm familiar with these guys is because I actually played a more recent shmup developed by Alpha System that released for modern consoles, known as Sisters Royale. And little did I know that it's kind of just a reskin of the same basic formula that went into the creation of these games, with the same type of, in those games it's called like a spirit power, but it's essentially the same type of shot types and ship types, or that comprise these games as well. And so once I, played Sisters Boreal a bunch and really enjoyed it, I was interested in the history of the series. And so this is one of the games. This is also quite cheap. It goes for less than $30 these days. I found it at a local game shop. I was really excited to see it because it's something that's a bit unusual. And what else can I say? Oh, yes. This game has a really infamous dub. If you just Google or go on YouTube and type in the title of this game and the English dub, it is hilarious. It's during that time period. Oh my goodness. It's a fly. Okay. It was during the time period, excuse me, where a lot of people just didn't care about the English dub. The companies that they licensed or they hired out to work on these things were just kind of winging it. And so it's just so special. You really have to give it a listen after you watch this video, if you're interested. If you're familiar with like the Ghost Stories dub or some of those infamous ones, it's right in the same direction. A fun fact also is that the local game store told me that this was actually part of someone's personal collection that they had sold to the shop recently, as indicated by this black dot here. And they said that the person who sold their games or gave away their personal collection, I'm not sure if they donated or sold, but was actually one of the developers for the PlayStation 2 netcode that went into some of the online play for the PlayStation 2. So I'm forgetting the person's name, unfortunately. I didn't look this up beforehand. But yeah, I just thought that was a cool bit of history. And now, it's going to go into the collection, and it'll be safe with me. Okay, let's see some of the other stuff we got here. Okay, here is another incredibly cheap game that I picked up from the Frankenson's vendor show. This is Pucelle Tactics. So I really didn't know anything about this game, but I saw, hey, it's less than, $15. Like, what could it be? I love tactics games. This looks like a Nippon Ichi style Disgaea game. Let's give it a try. And actually, that's exactly what it turned out to be. It said Mastiff here. I wasn't really familiar with Mastiff, but I believe this is actually developed by Nippon Ichi, and perhaps published by Mastiff. But when I looked up some gameplay after I took this home, it looks very much in the vein of Disgaea, or what Disgaea would turn out to be or develop over time to be. And one of the main mechanics about this game is that you hunt and recruit demons that you use later as part of your, tactics gameplay. And, that's something that happens in Disgaea too. So I haven't given it a shot yet. I've heard mixed things about this game being quite slow and kind of a product of its time. See, the case is a little dirty. Need to clean that off later. But I think it definitely seemed interesting. And I'm a sucker for cheap and also kind of niche games, and this happens to be one of the rather bizarre ones that was just tucked away in someone's booth. No one was really paying attention to it, and I'm a sucker for those types of things. So yeah, I look forward to giving this guy a shot. All right, here's a game that's pretty popular. Everybody knows and loves. It's Xenosaga 1 for the PlayStation 2. Game really needs no introduction. It is some of the precursor that gave rise to the Xenoblade series as we know it today. Of course, Xenogears being coming before this one. I own the second episode on the PlayStation 2 that I bought a long time ago, aiming to eventually play the games in this series, and that was before I had a hacked PS2 and everything. I'm talking in the realm of like 8 to 10 years ago. And then, sorry, my cats are fighting. The third game became very sought after and rare, and so I kind of gave up on ever being able to own all three of the games, but thankfully there's still ample ways to play them, so I'm not too beat up about that. The first game is actually the most available, and you can still pick it up for relatively cheap. So I saw this for under $30. I thought, I have the second game, always wanted to start playing this series. I've always been looking for a deal on the first game to get my feet wet, and now I have that. And as I said, I'm resolved to the fact that I'll never own the third one. I don't feel like paying hundreds of dollars for the third entry. However, I hear great things about these games. You can see Cosmos on the cover, I believe is her name. Never was able to get her in Xenoblade 2 because of the gacha system, curses. But I think I'll have a good time with this. Once I'm in the mood for an old school PS2 JRPG. You have to be in a particular mood for this sort of game. I had a lot more time when I was in high school, where I played the majority of this generation of game, but I'm willing to give it a shot soon. So yeah, now I have the means to do just that, and I have the second one ready. It's been sitting on my shelf for the better part of a decade, and hopefully it'll get played soon as well. Okay, so before I get to the last PS2 game, I just wanted to quickly throw this in. This is Trauma Center Second Opinion. Also got at that vendor event. Majority of my retro-related pickups were at that event just because there's a lot of good deals out there. So this is Trauma Center Second Opinion, as I said. It is in the Trauma Center series of games, developed and published, I believe, by Atlas in North America. And I really enjoy this series. It got its start on the DS, Nintendo DS, where you play as a doctor, and in order to perform your operations and your medical procedures, you have to be very dexterous, doing many things with the touchscreen. If you're familiar with a rhythm game, it's actually closer to playing it like that, especially like an Owen Dawn or like an Elite Beat Agents, than I would have otherwise expected. Pokemon Ranger is another kind of, it's a very mechanical type of game. These are on the Wii, of course, so there were 2 games released on the DS in that sort of difficult touchscreen style, and these are a bit more easy. There are 3 games on the Wii. This is the second game, as you might, infer from Second Opinion. So yeah, as I said, these games are actually really good as far as the general setting, the general vibe you get from treating these patients, putting in these kind of hospital drama situations. There's some supernatural elements as well. I believe the majority of the games follow this protagonist here, although he kind of changes appearances a bunch in between games, so it's kind of hard to tell what he looks like. I know the nurse is the same from the first 2 DS games, and also the first game, I suppose, on the Wii. But yeah, I think it's a general overarching story, besides the third game on the Wii called Trauma Team. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I enjoy these guys a lot. Funny thing is that the last game on the Wii was the last game in the series, I believe. I don't know why Atlas let it went dormant. I think it's a really good series that deserves a sequel at some point. I mean, on the Switch, it's a little bit difficult because you can't really rely on the touchscreen for anything these days. But, throw in some Joy-Con gimmicks in there. I think you could make it work. And I would really be interested in a new installment in this series. I didn't say if I played it yet. Oh, my mistake. So I've played the first 2 games on the DS, and I've also played the third game on the Wii. Went a little bit out of order there, so I'll quickly wrap up the first game on the Wii, and then I'll get to this one. You can see I still have the price tag sticker on it. You can see this is also a cheap game. So, it's definitely something that you should take a look at if you're ever interested in, or if you have any passing interest in it. Okay, so this was the crown jewel of the Frankensons trading event that I picked up. This is the last game that I got from them. It is a PlayStation 2 game, and this is called Hot Gimmick, I believe. Cosplay-jong. I'm butchering that. I should probably look up the title of this later. But essentially, it is a sexy mahjong game published by Saikyo, which you might be familiar with. This is one of the legendary shmup developers that did a bunch of arcade titles, some of the most beloved, such as Gunbird. You have Strikers. You have, you have Tengai and Samurai Aces. So a really prolific developer. And of course, if you're a Japanese arcade developer during the time where video games were going downhill, you needed to make a strip mahjong game, right? You need to bring in the money somehow. And so, yeah, I was just going through the bins of one vendor who had just a bunch of shovelware, and I happened to come across this guy, which, I'm not really, I'm not going to say that I'm super into the aesthetics. However, just the history of it, the fact that this was, a console home release of a game, I believe it's not technically developed by Saikyo. This is more of like a port of one of their arcade titles that goes by a similar name. However, I still think it's a cool bit of history. It's kind of hilarious too. You have like what is going on in the back here. Like there's just these two guys in these morph suits or these skin tight jumpsuits, in addition to just people in various bikinis and stuff. And you have the mahjong screen. Another fun fact about this game is that the disc is really nice. Like look at this. It's like kind of like a holographic, monochromatic look to it. Yeah. I mean, this is a really nice looking import. And so of course, the general theme is didn't pay too much for it because it was in like a bargain bin. But yeah, I've never seen this before. I saw that label and I had to learn more about it, and eventually decided to give it a try. So yeah, I'm happy to own this weird piece of arcade history because I'm really into the arcade stuff, as I said again. All right, so coming up to the end of this video here, let's see. Got this big box. This is the Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative. So you have Mizuki on the cover here with Aiba. This is the collector's edition, I believe, which comes with a Good Smile Aiba figure and other miscellaneous crap. Just in the interest of time, I'm not going to open this up, but it is open. You see I took off the shrink wrap and all. I haven't given it a shot yet, but the Somnium Files was one of my favorite visual novels when I played it recently, and I learned more about it, or I learned after the fact that it was actually done by the creator of the 999, the Zero and the Zero Escape series. So that makes a lot of sense because I really enjoyed those games as well, and so I'm eager to see what they did with the follow-up. Yeah, I mean, it's a visual novel, right? So it's kind of gonna you know what you're going to expect with games like these. They're kind of adventure focused, where they have multiple endings, and sometimes you have to fulfill crappier endings in order to get the better ones. But regardless, I believe it's going to be a good time. Well, let's see. I've been away from spoilers, so I don't even know what the general consensus is on the sequel. It came out a few weeks or a couple months ago, I believe. But yeah, I will get to it at some point. The figure looked okay. I mean, excuse me. I don't really collect figures, so I'm not really confident in my ability to rate it or anything like that. And I'm not super into how they look or whatever, and I'm not really going to display it. It's going to be in here, at least I think. But yeah, I'm eager to give the game a shot. And if you have any opinions on it, definitely open to ask or open to hearing about them. So yeah, I mean, yeah, excuse me for not even knowing what's inside. I really don't know why I bought this. I think I just own the other collector's edition for this game, so I thought, okay, whatever, I'll pick up the other one. Okay, it says here a soundtrack, an art book, and the figure, whatever. So yeah, it's just a giant hunk. I kind of don't like how unwieldy it is, but whatever. Okay, the last thing. This is a piece of game-related merch, so this isn't exactly, a video game itself, but it is related. This is excuse me, there we go, Guide to Japanese Role-Playing Games. This is a giant-ass book sold by Bitmap Books. Imported it from the UK. And yeah, I mean, it's just, once I saw what the subject matter was, I kind of had to buy it because this is kind of like, I'm a huge fan of Japanese RPGs, as you might have gathered from what I just bought today, or what I've showed you today. And so, having a book that just discusses this, it's kind of like a childhood dream of mine, because I used to read a lot of gaming magazines, and I'd always be coming through them for the imports and the Japanese role-playing games, right? Because I really wanted to learn more about them. I really wanted to get those experiences and get all the cool things that Japan was getting. And so having a book that has, some of the more famous stuff, we got Valkyrie Profile, and also some of the more, I would say, obscure stuff, Radiata Stories, that was a PS2 game, relatively unknown, Resonance of Fate, which had a recent re-release, so perhaps not that obscure. Of course, Xenoblade. Let's go to something more obscure. Let's see. Yeah, so we have Suikoden Tierkreis, some of the less popular games in the Suikoden series. Marl Kingdom, Lagaya, right? It just has a lot of content here. This is like a hefty book that just goes through Japanese role-playing games. So I'm really excited just to go give this a good read. Alfred Odyssey, of course. Twinbee RPG, never even knew that existed. So yeah, I'm really just excited to go through this and kind of discover some of the other stuff that I really haven't had the chance to experience before. This seems to be some PS3 JRPGs, Time and Eternity, White Knight Chronicles. Maybe it's sectioned by console. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I really, having a book at at my fingertips that has a bunch of this obscure, coverage is kind of exciting to me. So of course I had to buy this. It's pretty famous, one of their releases. So they often open pre-orders to secure a copy. They do printings in rounds. So if you're at all interested, and it's a really beautiful book, right? It has like a bookmark right there as well to keep your place. Yeah, it's beautiful. So I definitely would recommend it. I'm definitely a happy camper here. I'm really looking forward to giving that a good shot. So yeah, I think that's really everything that I wanted to show off today. Sorry that I just continued talking, or ranted and blabbed on, but this just serves as a recap of everything that I've come across and bought so far. And yeah, I really appreciate your time and your attention if you made it this far. Otherwise, uh, you know, have a good evening.